Picture this. Your alarm goes off. It's barely dawn. And
worst part of the day.
Right. And before your feet even hit the floor, you're already behind. Like you grab your phone from the nightstand and boom, it's just a tsunami.
Just a wall of notifications.
Exactly. Unread emails demanding immediate answers, endless push notifications, breaking news alerts, and there's this relentless, exhausting societal pressure whispering or honestly like screaming that if you aren't hustling and optimizing and constantly crushing it, you're fundamentally failing.
Yeah, that you're just falling behind everyone else.
Yeah. You are expected to be perpetually on, competing for every inch of ground. It literally physically feels like you are drowning in the demands of the modern world.
It is entirely exhausting.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. And that sensation of drowning, of barely keeping your head above the surface is so incredibly common right now.
Because we're just fighting all the time.
Yes, exactly. We spend every single day fighting the current of our own lives. We've been conditioned to treat every obstacle, every difficult client, every personal setback as this concrete wall that we have to aggressively smash our heads against just to prove our worth.
Which is exactly why today's deep dive is, well, we're throwing you a lifeline today. We are exploring this fascinating source text centered on ancient Taoist philosophy.
Specifically, Lao Tzu's concept of living like water.
Right, living like water. And we aren't looking at this as some, esoteric mountaintop meditation practice where you just detach from society entirely.
Oh, no, not at all.
We are treating this as a literal, highly actionable survival guide for your inbox, your career, and honestly, your sanity in a hyper-competitive world. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, the core premise here is just brilliantly counterintuitive to that hustle culture you just described. Living like water is absolutely not about surrendering to the chaos.
Because I think that's what people assume, right? Oh, completely. They think it's about going limp or like letting people walk all over you, but it's not. It is about adopting a state of being that is simultaneously incredibly soft yet completely unbreakable.
Unbreakable softness.
Let's test that physically, looking at how water actually behaves in nature, because it completely challenges our modern definition of what, strength or problem solving looks like.
It really does.
Because we are constantly conditioned to believe that true strength means being rigid, hard, unyielding, you stand your ground.
Right, the whole immovable object idea.
Yes. Yet the philosophy points out a biological reality here. Water is arguably the softest substance on Earth, but given enough time, it violently erodes the hardest rock.
It flips the entire script on power.
Yeah.
I mean, we tend to think of power as this explosive, immediate force, right? But water demonstrates that consistent, adaptable softness is actually the ultimate force.
How? So, in practice?
Well, look at how a stream physically interacts with its environment. When it's flowing down a mountain and it encounters a massive boulder, it doesn't engage in some useless, ego-driven battle to smash through the granite.
It doesn't get offended by the rock.
Exactly. It doesn't perceive the rock as a personal insult. It just effortlessly, smoothly flows around it.
And it doesn't lose a single ounce of its momentum in the process either.
Yeah.
It just finds the path of least resistance and continues its journey.
Perfectly said.
There's also the element of collective power, right?
Yeah.
A massive, destructive tidal wave is, at its core, nothing more than a combination of tiny, soft drops of water.
Which is wild to think about.
Right. When that softness is combined and directed, it creates unimaginable landscape-altering change. But, okay, I have to push back on the corporate application of this.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because I know what you are likely thinking listening to this. In today's cutthroat environment, doesn't softness just translate to being a pushover? If I just flow around every problem and avoid conflict, aren't people just going to take advantage of me?
Yeah, that is the natural fear, for sure. We deeply confuse softness with weakness and rigidity with strength. But look at the underlying mechanics of what flowing around that boulder actually accomplishes.
Okay.
Bypassing a useless conflict isn't weakness, it is highly strategic energy preservation.
Oh, wow. Strategic energy preservation.
Right. When you engage in a screaming match over a minor disagreement at work, you are bleeding out your kinetic energy on a rock that isn't going to move anyway.
You're just splashing against it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Water saves its energy for what truly matters.
I see the logic of preserving energy, but let's test the idea of softness as actual strength. Think about a broadsword.
Okay, a broadsword.
Yeah, a massive blade made of hardened steel. It's rigid, it's intimidating, and it's visibly, strong. But because it is entirely unyielding, if you apply enough lateral pressure to the side of that blade, it will violently snap in half.
Yes, it can't bend.
And exactly. It has a breaking point precisely because it cannot bend. Now, compare that rigid sword to a modern high-pressure water jet.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right, it's just water. But when you channel it, focus it, and apply velocity, a water jet can cleanly slice through solid titanium. It doesn't break under pressure. It uses the pressure to become a blade.
What's fascinating here is the versatility required to achieve that. The philosophy is very careful to balance this out. Living like water doesn't mean you are perpetually this gentle, nurturing spring rain.
You're not just a drizzle all the time.
Exactly. It means you have the capacity for that rain when growth is needed, but you also possess the absolute unstoppable force of a flash flood when a boundary is violently crossed.
So it's a spectrum.
It's about having a massive dynamic range.
Yeah.
You aren't passive. You are adaptable to whatever the environment demands of you in that exact second.
I love that. And if we follow that idea of adaptation, it pulls us perfectly from how water acts against outside forces like rocks and boundaries to how water exists internally.
Which is where it gets really profound.
Because if water is so powerful, why is it so notoriously hard to grasp? Like you try to hold it in your hand and it just slips through.
Because it refuses to be contained.
Well, yeah, it absolutely refuses to cling to a single shape. You pour water into a teacup, it becomes the teacup. You guide it into a riverbed. It seamlessly curves to fit the banks of the stream. It adapts to its container without fighting it.
And the psychology behind this non-attachment is huge. Think about the properties of water. It has no inherent color.
Right.
It has no smell. It possesses no fixed shape of its own. When we map this onto human behavior, it's about dropping the heavy, exhausting masks we wear every day.
Oh, the masks. We all have them.
We do. We walk around rigidly attached to these identities like, I am a senior vice president, or I am the smart one, or even I am the victim.
We cling to those labels so hard.
We really do. But the philosophy argues that when you drop your ego and detach from these rigid societal containers, you suddenly gain the ability to flow into any room, interact with any social class, and navigate any situation without feeling awkward or out of place.
Because you aren't violently fighting the new container you've been poured into, you're just filling it.
Yeah.
But this brings up a massive personal struggle for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people listening. If I am constantly taking the shape of my container, like if I'm molding myself to the expectations of my demanding boss at work, and then completely changing my shape for my family at home, and then shifting yet again for my friends, how do I avoid losing my actual self? Doesn't this philosophy just turn you into a chameleon, like a people pleaser with zero core identity?
I get that. That is the danger if you misinterpret the concept. But the distinction lies in understanding chemistry.
Essentially. Chemistry. Okay, I'm listening.
Think about water as it goes through massive environmental shifts. It can freeze into solid, unyielding ice. It can flow as liquid water. It can even evaporate entirely into invisible vapor.
Right, the states of matter.
Exactly. The state has radically changed. The shape has completely changed. But the essence, the actual H2O molecules themselves, has not altered one bit.
Oh, wow. Okay, that makes so much sense. It's separating the container from the contents.
Precisely. Being like water doesn't mean abandon your core values. It means you stop confusing your essence with your temporary shape.
You are not the teacup.
Right. You are not your job title. You are not your current relationship status or your bank account balance. When you truly realize that your core self, your H2O, is untouchable, regardless of what bizarre, uncomfortable container you are temporarily poured into, you achieve unbelievable psychological freedom.
And I imagine it totally changes how we process failure or crisis, too. Like, water is the ultimate master of accepting change as the only constant in the universe.
It really is.
Think about boiling water until it completely evaporates. In human terms, that looks like complete destruction. That's losing a business you spent 10 years building. That's a devastating divorce. It feels like you have just vanished.
Like you're just gone.
Yeah. But the water isn't gone. It simply takes the courage to condense, form a new cloud, and fall as rain to start the cycle all over again. Like, disappointment is literally just a state change. It's not an ending.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And if you can internalize that your essence is safe through that evaporation, you can survive things that shatter rigid people.
Okay, so if we've mastered this internal formlessness, we know we are H2O, regardless of the container. How do we dictate our pace? How fast should we be moving through life?
That's the next big piece.
Right, because this dives into the Taoist concepts of time, movement, and specifically the power of the present moment. The philosophy poses that stillness is the fundamental starting point of all wisdom.
And the visual they use for this is just brilliant. Imagine scooping up a glass of muddy water from a rushing river.
Okay, got it, muddy water.
If you keep violently shaking that glass, walking around with it, obsessing over it, it stays completely murky. You can't see a thing through it.
Because it's all churned up.
Right. But if you simply set it down on a table and allow it to be perfectly still, gravity does the work. The mental sediment naturally sinks to the bottom. The water becomes crystal clear, and the surface tension smooths out until it becomes a mirror capable of reflecting reality perfectly.
It's cognitive load, right? Like our brains are that muddy water when we are doom scrolling, answering Slacks, and cooking dinner at the exact same time.
Yes, exactly. The philosophy argues that the human mind functions under the exact same mechanical laws.
We just need to stop shaking the glass.
If we stop forcing frantic action, if we allow ourselves genuine stillness, the emotional and mental sediment settles. We stop hallucinating threats that aren't there, and we can finally see the reality of our situation clearly.
And it is from that foundation of clear, still water that we move to action. Which brings us to the concept of Wu Wei.
Wu Wei.
Roughly translated, it means flowing with the path or acting without forcing. It's about utilizing the natural timing of the universe rather than straining against fate. Like water doesn't frantically sprint to the ocean.
No, it takes its time.
It travels through winding valleys, pooling when it needs to, overflowing when it's full, operating with absolute inevitable patience. And it completely lets go of the past. Water that flows past a rock never returns to obsess over the rock.
Wu Wei is perhaps the single most wildly misunderstood concept in this entire philosophy. People in the West hear acting without forcing, and they immediately interpret it as a license to do absolutely nothing.
Because honestly, that's exactly how it sounds.
It does sound like that.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If I decide I'm going to practice Wu Wei at my corporate job and I just stop forcing things, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to get fired.
You probably would.
Right. So how do we practically draw the line between this enlightened flowing and just being a lazy couch potato who refuses to take responsibility?
It comes down to the critical difference between alignment and apathy. Let's ground this in a real-world scenario.
Okay, lay it on me.
Imagine you receive a wildly insulting, unfair email from a colleague, and your boss is CC'd.
Oh, my blood pressure is spiking just thinking about it.
Right. Your adrenaline spikes. The forcing action, thrashing against the current, is immediately hammering out a defensive, furious reply, hitting send in a blind rage, and creating a massive, chaotic HR nightmare.
You're just violently shaking the muddy glass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the apathy response, the lazy interpretation of Wu Wei, would be ignoring the email entirely, abandoning your professional boundaries, and letting people trample you.
Which we established we don't want to do.
Right. But true Wu Wei is the intense discipline of taking a breath. It is consciously stepping away from the keyboard and letting the murky water of your own spiked adrenaline settle for 2 hours.
Just letting the sediment fall.
Yes. It is waiting for the exact right moment, the perfect timing, to address the issue calmly, clearly, and with devastating effectiveness. In an era where every single app on our phones demands that we react right now, having the emotional intelligence to wait for the natural timing is a massive, almost unfair competitive advantage.
Wow, that reframes it completely. It actually takes immense effort to be still.
It's not easy at all.
It's the difference between a floating effortlessly on your back in the deep end, which takes incredible core balance, breath control, and spatial awareness, versus just giving up and sinking to the bottom like a stone. Like you're still actively participating in the water, you just aren't desperately fighting the physics of the pool.
You are utilizing the momentum of the current to get where you want to go, rather than exhausting your muscles swimming upstream against it.
So if we've mastered this internal stillness and pacing, the obvious next question is, what happens when that still water has to flow out and interact with a highly reactive, angry society?
That's where we see the real-world impact.
Right. Where does all this water ultimately end up? Gravity dictates that it inevitably moves downward. It goes to the lowest point to nourish everything else.
Which requires an embrace of radical humility. The philosophy points out a stark contrast here. Human beings spend their entire lives clawing over each other, desperately trying to reach the highest peak.
We want the top of the corporate ladder, the highest social status, the penthouse view.
Exactly. But water flows in the exact opposite direction. It actively seeks the lowest possible valleys, and it is only in those overlooked low places that it actually nourishes life.
And it provides that nourishment without an ounce of discrimination or expectation. Like, water hydrates a field of incredibly valuable, expensive cash crops with the exact same enthusiasm as it hydrates a patch of completely useless weeds.
It doesn't judge.
It doesn't send an invoice. It doesn't demand a thank you note. It creates immense value in total silence. Think about underground water.
Oh, groundwater is a great example.
It is flowing deep down in the dark, quietly nourishing the root systems of massive ancient forests, and nobody ever sees it. Nobody applies the groundwater.
It is a complete dismantling of our modern obsession with visible success. I mean, we live in an economy of attention.
We really do.
We post every minor achievement, every vacation, every promotion online because we are starved for external validation. We want everyone to see how important our water is.
Look at my water. Look how high it's flowing.
Exactly.
Wow.
But water itself operates invisibly. All streams eventually lead to the same sea, representing the interconnected unity of humanity. Water naturally cools heat and quenches thirst.
And society is pretty heated right now.
Very heated. In a society that is increasingly hyperpolarized and perpetually angry, this philosophy suggests we can actually be the cool water that lowers the temperature for the people around us.
The underground water concept really strikes a chord when you look at how the world actually functions. It makes me think of all the invisible forces in our lives that prevent society from completely collapsing.
Oh, for sure.
Like the IT department keeping the hospital servers running at 3 a.m., the backstage crew at a Broadway theater, dressed entirely in black, physically moving massive set pieces, while the lead actors stand in the spotlight and take the bows.
The ones doing the heavy lifting.
Right. The sanitation workers, the parents quietly making school lunches in the dark before dawn. They are the underground water. They kept the machinery of the world turning without ever standing on a stage. So what does this all mean? How does embracing that hidden downward flow actually protect us from burnout?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's about achieving absolute freedom. When your ego is tied to applause, you are a hostage.
A hostage to the audience.
Yes. If the audience doesn't clap or your boss doesn't notice your extra hours, you feel empty. But when you operate like water, when you focus entirely on giving value, doing the work, and nourishing your environment without a desperate, aching need for the spotlight, you become practically untouchable.
Because they can't take away what you never asked them for.
Exactly. You are no longer held captive by the opinions of others. You aren't crushed if you don't get the credit, because the credit was never the goal. The nourishment was the goal. The flow was the goal.
By not fighting for the top, you actually elevate yourself above the petty anxieties that consume everyone else. It's almost a psychological superpower. By needing nothing from the crowd, you become capable of anything.
Which is incredibly empowering.
It is, which perfectly synthesizes the ultimate reality of this philosophy. Living like water is absolutely not giving up. It is not resigning yourself to being a victim of your circumstances. It is a profound, clear-eyed understanding of the actual physics of the world.
It is the ultimate pragmatism. If you want to survive the absolute madness of the modern world without breaking, you must learn to be flexible, but not flimsy.
Flexible, but not flimsy.
You must be gentle, but never lazy. You learn to exist gracefully and powerfully within the chaos, rather than letting the chaos grind you into dust.
Flexible but not flimsy. I think that's the perfect distillation of this entire mindset. We've explored how to act like water, how to separate our essence from our shape, and how to harness the quiet power of underground flow.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. We've talked about the incredible mental clarity that comes from letting your sediment settle so your mind becomes a perfectly still pool capable of reflecting reality.
The clear mirror.
Right. But I want to leave you with a final lingering thought that builds on that imagery. Think about your perfectly still pool. What kind of environment are you placing that pool in?
Oh, that's a great question.
Are you actively choosing to place yourself under beautiful skies, surrounded by relationships and media that nourish you so your still water reflects beauty? Or are you constantly, intentionally leaving your perfectly still mind under the harsh neon glare of a doom-scrolling feed, reflecting anger, anxiety, and comparison all day long?
It's entirely up to you.
It's not just about doing the hard work to become water. It's about what you consciously allow your water to reflect today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take a breath, Let the sediment settle, and we'll see you next time.